On our broadcast tonight, crisis at sea. That burning oil rig off the Louisiana coast, it's gone. Tonight, the workers feared lost. And what can this mean for the environment? Harsh words for Wall Street. What does President Obama's speech to them today mean to the rest of us? What really happened? An American who died a heroic death we didn't know about until now. Fire and ice. Tonight, is Iceland going to be like this for a while? What makes it a unique and volatile place? Free lunch, an Earth Day look at an alternative to the internal combustion engine. And the news from Washington that Beau has gone and done it again. Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. It was a spectacular explosion, a massive fire, and a genuine human tragedy involving 11 missing men. Tonight, the oil platform that was on fire off the coast of Louisiana is gone. It sank today into the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and the first thing a lot of people thought about was all that oil. This can't be good for the environment. It's where we start off tonight with NBC's Ron Mott. Ron, good evening.
Brian, good evening to you. We are at the Naval Air Station just outside New Orleans, which are headquarters for Coast Guard operations in this area. And tonight, the Coast Guard is still referring to this as a search and rescue mission, despite what we saw out there on the Gulf today. But they are acknowledging they're reaching the tail end of the search for survivors. This morning, the fire that's raged out of control since Tuesday night's explosion claimed what was left of the Deepwater horizon in yet another explosion, as the suspended rig, which isn't anchored to the ocean floor, sank beneath the surface of the Gulf. The air search for 11 missing oil rig workers resumed at daybreak, with choppers rejoining a pair of Coast Guard cutters that stayed on the water overnight looking for any signs of life. The search covered 3,000 square miles.
Based upon reports from our crew members we met as they came in last night, at the time of the incident, they believe that they may have been on board the rig and not able to evacuate. We haven't confirmed that yet, and search and rescue efforts are continuing.
The first Coast Guard crew to arrive at the drilling platform described an apocalyptic scene.
The rig was just fully engulfed, flames about 300 feet in the air, and there are a couple lifeboats on fire by it, and it just was surreal, something I've never seen before.
Of the 126 crew on board, 115 made it to rescue vessels.
We know that 115 people are safe, and that's a tribute to the efforts of the rescue services and some of the crew members on board the rig.
Now, officials will turn their attention to any environmental impacts, whether a well 18,000 feet below the surface is still leaking crude, and what happened to a tank aboard the rig holding 700,000 gallons of diesel.
Right now, we do not have evidence that there is any crude emanating from the subsurface wellhead. What we have on the surface is residual from the explosion fire and the things that were going on yesterday.
A company official said the exact cause of the initial blast remains under investigation, adding it appears to be a blowout where oil or gas pressure overwhelms the drilling equipment. Tonight, the president is being briefed at the White House on the situation in the Gulf. This as the search for those 11 missing men continue and the possibility of all that oil that may be leaking under the surface of the water, Brian.
Ron Mott starting us off from Belle Chase, Louisiana tonight. Ron, thanks. To our other major story tonight here in New York today, President Obama was pitching financial reform in the shadow of Wall Street itself. But instead of slamming the big banks, the speech was more of a call to arms, urging everybody to get on board. Our White House correspondent Savannah Guthrie with us from there with more. Savannah, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. Well, with his Wall Street reform package at a crucial stage, a vote expected that's key on Monday, the president went to the heart of the financial system in this country, New York City, to close the sale.
Differences? It's also good to be back in Lower Manhattan, a few blocks from Wall Street. It really is good to be back.
In New York, the president framed his plans for reform as Wall Street's patriotic duty.
I urge you to join me not only because it is in the interest of your industry, but also because it's in the interest of your country.
The mostly friendly audience of supporters also included the CEO of Goldman Sachs, whose firm was just charged by the SEC with $1 billion fraud. and executives of other Wall Street titans like Bank of America and J.P. Morgan Chase.
A free market was never meant to be a free license to take whatever you can get, however you can get it. That's what happened too often in the years leading up to this crisis. As a nation,
From the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, traders were watching, some expecting worse.
At first, I thought maybe he was really going to bash Wall Street, but it wasn't that. He really was very, very nice to Wall Street, actually.
On Capitol Hill, Democrats pushed forward, setting a key procedural vote for Monday, even as negotiations with Republicans were still underway.
Reserving the right to object, and I will object. Here we go again.
We're going to move forward on this piece of legislation because the American people demand it.
The reform plan includes a new consumer protection agency, procedures to dissolve large firms that get into trouble, and restrictions to keep big firms from taking risks that threaten the whole financial system. But the bill does not set hard limits on the size of banks, which are only getting bigger. 15 years ago, the 6 largest banks represented 17% of the American economy. Now, 63%. Some Democrats want the bill to change that.
On the front end, we have to make sure the banks themselves don't get too big, because too big to fail is too big.
Today, the president called on Wall Street to stop fighting reform.
Because ultimately, there is no dividing line between Main Street and Wall Street. We will rise or we will fall together as one nation.
Well, ultimately, Democrats do feel confident they're going to get this financial regulatory reform bill through the Congress. Meantime, 7 former and current executives from Goldman Sachs, including the CEO, Lloyd Blankfein, have been called to Capitol Hill to testify on Tuesday, Brian.
Savannah Guthrie at the White House for us tonight. Savannah, thanks. And the president's message to Wall Street is one thing, but what will this mean to
Sunday, battle lines are drawn on the bill to rein in Wall Street. Will Democrats and Republicans come together? Before they go behind closed doors, Senators Shelby and Dodd answer to us. Only on Meet the Press with David Gregory.